Hey, it's Brooke and Jeffrey in the morning.
You can scroll it later, or better, you can listen live to Brooke and Jeffrey every weekday morning. Big fun, real moments, the laughs that make your day. Your station, your city, right now. That's called radio. In Seattle, that's called Moving 92.5.
Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken heart and soul consciousness. Come journey with us exploring the meaningfulness of astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sue Rose Minahan, Talk Cosmos, and it's an exciting moment. Uranus, as of today, when you see this, because I'll be transparent right in front, my guest is from Australia, and therefore we are actually recording this just when Uranus is at the tail end of its 7-year cycle in Taurus. However, when you see it from here on in, Uranus is entering Gemini for a 7-year stint. However, our subject is going to be resting on the transformational energies of two dwarf planets, Pluto in Aquarius and Haumea in Scorpio. Now, in 2023, they entered and formed their first square, but they move through their orbit so similarly. We have a lot to talk about, but this is transformation. It doesn't happen in a heartbeat. It isn't like something just goes away and comes right back. It's a process, and it's very layered, and this square is lasting for a long time. I hope that gives you a little bit of a grounding as we move forward, because with Uranus too, it's a lot of immediacy and suddenness. Just preparing this seemed to indicate that we're on a journey together. I love it, but I'm holding on like galloping along. It's a horse year too, isn't it? In fire. Number 1, on we go. We are now ready. Thank you.
Talk Cosmos engages unique events during the 3rd and 4th weeks of the month, featuring a myriad of new and returning guests. Joining host and founder Sue Rose Minahan, they co-create to explore and contemplate a wide spectrum of potent subjects. Embark on today's topic within our panorama of guests and insights as we welcome the astrologers for this conversation.
Oh, hello, Melissa.
Hello. Good to see you.
It is. We're uniting the hemispheres. You're down in Australia.
Yes, we're in autumn. Yeah,
yes,
we're going into winter.
Well, our spring has been quite unusual here in Hawaii from many people's respects. However, we are beginning and concluding. We have Pluto Haumea, the two dwarfs. Quite exciting. I call this a slow birth because of its elongated, ongoing square. Tension. Yeah. Squares are like, actions, steps.
And birth is intense. So nobody really wants it to be drawn out, do they?
Well, that's very true. That's very true. I have some plants here. Anyway, we'll bring that up later. Melissa Elvira Billington is in Brisbane, Australia, and she has a Substack and a YouTube channel, and it's at Melissa Elvira Billington, and I'll bring up more of that in just a moment here. Let's trust the longer journey. She's an astrologer, a writer, a teacher, an actor, and a author activist. An activist. I love that.
Artivist. Yeah.
Yes. Artivist. Okay. Yes. Oops. Now we're going back quickly. Yeah. And you bridge healing and creative arts. You've got your Masters of Environmental Management in Australia, and presently the managing editor of podcasts of Science Right Now. Besides the fact that you have a Yoga Freedom on YouTube and these wonderful performances, these one-act shows that you've created and performed that are just remarkable, such as this picture here. So I thank you very much for returning. We had one earlier this year in January about Ixion, and then last autumn, one about Maki Maki, Eris, and
Varuna?
yes, yes. And they also have their lower octaves.
Octaves.
Yes. We continue. This is exciting. Let's talk about the archetypes. There's a lot to understand. Pluto, we know in Western astrology, is the god of the underworld, a transformer, the keeper of souls. And you know, when he took Persephone, that story, which people can, that's when the underworld had an afterlife. Before that time, they just stayed there. It was like, an Odyssey or something. Well, you go down and visit them, but they're not necessarily coming back. You know.
You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Yeah, Iliad that was. Yeah, and you had to have an escort, which is amazing that such trips could be made, because usually it's Mercury, the only one that can get down there. But it's in Aquarius, which is a different, fascinating, it's networking, it's air. Air can be fierce. We had a storm here and it howled. It was very noisy. It's not necessarily so passive.
Unity and diversity is a phrase I really like for Aquarius. It feels to me, that sense of how you kind of evolve through the elements, like Aries, the first fire, and then there's an evolution to Leo, and there's an evolution to Sagittarius. So it seems like to me with the air signs, you have Gemini as local, right? Neighborhood, siblings, communicating on that very local, immediate level. And then Libra widens out into society, where we get into justice and balancing groups, but it's still human, right? Mostly. And then Aquarius to me is communication beyond into all, right? Outer space, extraterrestrial or extrasensory, intuitive with animals, other beings.
Intuitive. I like that you added that. That's very true. Yes.
Yeah. And so then Pluto in Aquarius, what is that? That's transformation. That's a psychological consciousness of how we are unified in our diversity or not.
Yeah, and bridging the gap really immediately there, because Uranus, with the electricity. I know Rick Levine. I just listened to him today in a Patreon that he does, and it is irrevocable. When the ions, they just need to connect, but it's bridging. And in vibrational astrology, all the air signs are exactly as you are denoting them, that they are relating to, just as you had said, the environment, immediate, then the relationships, and then the community at large. So there's really a dynamic here that's different in the kaleidoscope of these aspects, having Pluto in Aquarius, bridging heaven and the underworld.
Right. Right. And also, I think there's a lot of technology associated with Aquarius, right? So that's another means that we have and has been developed since the discovery of Uranus. That
last year, yes.
Right. So Aquarius rules that relationship between Aquarius and Uranus. With the discovery of electricity and electromagnetism, and now we're looking at how far we've come since the 1800s in terms of communication, means of transmitting data and understanding and information. Does it go beyond data? Does it go beyond the tech? Can we maintain the community part?
It's always that polarity, because you think of Aquarius, the opposite is Leo, and it's bringing that heart into Aquarius. So true. And it's a tool. That's the other thing that I've been doing some research, because it is a cycle really where Pluto is square Haumea, as I noticed all throughout the Uranus 7-year cycle that started. but there's these other big cycles too, and tools keep coming up. So when you mention about AI or technology, at best it's a tool, because consciousness seems to be, again and again when I look at it, expanded through our tools.
Absolutely.
I remember E.T. I long years ago, maybe in the late 60s or something, there was a movie. It wasn't, 2001. That was it. And there was a
Space Odyssey.
Space
Odyssey.
Yeah, maybe it was Space Odyssey. Yeah, the names kind of, I jumble it.
Something like that.
But he throws, when I say he, it was some kind of a chimp or a gorilla or some monkey type
primate.
Animal. Yeah, primate. Thank you. Very good. And throws up this bone up in the air. And it was just so dynamic. It was like really the beginning of a tool, because, you used it in different ways. Right. All right. I diverge.
Diverge and diversify.
Yes, we're doing it. We're doing the Iranian Gemini. So Haumea, let's talk about Haumea, the Hawaiian creator, goddess of birth and rebirth out of every part of her body. It was bringing forth the people, the land, like Pele, the volcano goddess, vegetation, food, all of it.
Yeah, life itself, basically, as we know it. Right. And I feel like if anybody is familiar with Makemake and Haumea are both fertility and food deities, and yet in different different islands. Hawaii for Haumea,
or Easter Island, right? Versus
Rapa Nui, Easter Island. And yet Makemake is much more about the sort of like sustainability and the longer term vision. He's teaching, you can't just eat all the eggs. You can't just eat all the birds. You have to look ahead to the cycle.
Consider the group.
And consider the group. Yeah. Haumea is much more immediate. And that, I think, is reflected in the planet's rotation, the fastest rotation, right?
Oh, it is. Yeah,
4-hour day.
Yeah.
And
if it went any faster, it'd fall apart.
Exactly. And so that regeneration, that capacity for renewal is really quick. So even though I think Pluto and Haumea have similar lengths around the sun, they're out there in 200 and some years, 200 plus years to come around the sun.
Yeah.
So they're generational, of course. And yet her day, that immediate renewal.
Operate differently. Yeah. Within their cycle. Good point. You bring to mind, though, not to expand too far out, but Ceres, which is a dwarf planet, our inner dwarf planet in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, because she is so much about nurturing and agriculture and food. So it's a theme that runs through so much of it, but how to understand it, because here was creation. In some ways, I think of Haumea somewhat as Gaia. Yeah, although Gaia didn't populate, well, she did because of her relationship with Uranus. She populated all kinds of things that weren't necessarily so thought out, but they happened. Well, Scorpio.
Well, so I was just going to add on to that what you were saying about Ceres, and that's very tied in because the myth of Ceres or Demeter is very tied into Persephone, Proserpine, and Pluto or Hades, right? So if you're doing Greek and Roman, so many cultures have a teaching story for the seasons, a way of understanding the cyclical or sporadic nature of existence, right? But just wanting to say about Haumea that I didn't quite complete that thought was. The food for Makemake is much more focused on birds and eggs, whereas Haumea, it's much more plant. And I think that also reflects that quick regeneration, because plants are just like, you cut them back and they go, oh yeah.
Even Chernobyl over there with the horrible, explosion with the nuclear has since grown it's regenerated. All I'm saying is that people can't live there, but the plants grow. Yes.
Right. And that's actually a really great example of Pluto, right? Because of nuclear power, Pluto, and most people probably watching this would know that Pluto is equated with nuclear power because atomic energy and power was in development when we saw Pluto discovered in the
1930, exactly. Yeah, for good or bad.
And so that Chernobyl is an example of like, here's this transformation of a landscape. Haumea then comes in, and it's the plants that are much quicker. And I feel like that's also reflective of how the phrase that we have for Haumea from the myth, the Hawaiian myth, is that she births from all over her body, just like a plant does, right? You put a plant back and it goes every which way.
Here, flower there, or root. Yes, exactly. Oh, except for Pele. Pele, the volcano here that's still erupting, Kilauea, which it is on the big island where I am, and every 10 days it goes up for 3 or 4 and then goes down up high, 1,000, high. So but that was a natural. It is.
That's like,
and it only gets bigger. It's like, ooh, it's interesting. I don't know. I have tremendous respect. And Scorpio. Let's talk about Scorpio.
Well, one more thing before we get to Scorpio, but it ties into Scorpio, is that we didn't really talk about Pluto in terms of power. And I think that's another good word, right? For Pluto.
Absolutely.
And then Pluto rules Scorpio in modern astrology. So again, power.
And it's power versus powerlessness. Because from what I understand through courses was that Pluto is resources. It digs down in the earth, it finds a gem, and it exchanges, and particularly with Scorpio, 8th house or however, it's exchanging your resources, which is a commitment between, for empowerment of each. But if that is not working any longer, if it's older, if it's faded, it's many reasons why it's just, maybe it's run out for whatever the energy, however, it's powerlessness. And that's the amazing thing about it. You've got to and we're in that cycle. I'm glad you brought that, because if we're transforming, why are we transforming? In this case, it isn't just identity. It's for the thrive and survive, or survive and thrive. We want to thrive. That's the goal.
It is, yes, because survival is not an empowered place. So if you're talking about power, I think that empowerment versus being disempowered or having power over, those are not positive activations of the power.
No. And it can be, it is emotional when you come to Scorpio, and we all have our lower and our higher self, and we're all mortals. And that's why could be saying we're here to learn these things. But to be retributive against someone, or to be blaming, it's a matter of learning that counseling within, which Scorpio can master so beautifully, turning that table, it's like the phoenix that rises out of the ashes.
And then becomes the eagle. I just love that about the Scorpio being the only sign that has this evolution inherent in it. And you see it between the scorpion, which most people know as a symbol, but in tarot, Scorpio is represented as the eagle, and in between the phoenix, right? So the scorpion is so potentially self-sabotaging. I remember reading this about scorpions themselves, the animal, that if you were to put a ring of fire around a scorpion, it would sting itself rather than be immolated. So there's this like protective but destructive principle in this lower, and I also started, go ahead.
No, go ahead, continue.
The sensitivity, I just feel like there's such an immense sensitivity with Scorpio, and in that scorpion form, it's on the ground, right? It's tiny, and it has all these little hairs. Every little hair is like an antenna. And so it needs to be defensive because of its position. But an eagle has the same perception, the same capacity to see and to perceive fine detail at a distance, but a different perspective. It's above as opposed to underneath and
Oh, yes,
vulnerable.
this is fascinating to keep this idea, because as we go along with rebirthing, which is this tremendous, because it's been, well, the idea is that Pluto by itself transforms situation, purges it, it takes away. It's like a glacier, it takes it away. Yet Haumea, for many of us, it's conjunct in our charts. That's the rebirthing, which I always took for granted in a way until that awareness came to mind. So this idea
You're referring, oh, sorry.
no, I'm just thinking of the natal position. Like right now, Haumea and Pluto are transiting to this square, but
there's a generation where it was conjunct. I think that's what you were saying, right?
It's been conjunct, and that means that the rebirth is part of that transformation process.
I think this is something that Alan, I've had heard through Alan. I'm not sure if
yes, same here.
His thought, but that death and rebirth. So we'd always thought of Pluto as death and rebirth. But now that we have Haumea, we realize that was the whole generation of people who had Haumea and Pluto conjunct.
That's exactly it.
So their experience was death and rebirth are together.
Yeah. Which is
and now our experience, what we're experiencing is that they're at a square to each other. Right.
Yeah, meaning a lot of action. And as you can see, and probably worldwide, wherever you go, there are needs to refocus and rebirth, you could say. I brought this slide up because since we're talking about these Uranus and Pluto actually right now, which we will in a second more, we're still within that post-shadow time since it went direct, and it won't be finished until a month from now on the 21st of May. Meanwhile, just prior to that, which is still ahead of us, Pluto will have its retrograde period on the 6th of May until about the 15th or 16th, depending where you live in the world, of October. And so Pluto is going to go between 5.5 degrees to 3 degrees Scorpio. And we're in that pre-shadow time right now for most of this year. And Uranus is, and I figured this out, I thought I'd throw it in because this square is ongoing. Believe me, it's through 27, through 28, through 29, which we won't talk about all, but it's important to realize it's a long overlay of the backdrop of the plays that go on in our life and the situations as an emphasis. But Uranus retrograde for this year begins in the fall, just about when Pluto goes direct, just before the 9th. And then it extends into February of next year. And it goes from also about 5 degrees, 42, to 1 degree Gemini. So anyway, it'll be quite a bit. Well, here I did bring up for people watching this the day of our event because it is the Uranus at 0 degrees. And I covered that with Mark Jones and Laura Tad about a month, 3 weeks ago. But nevertheless, this is a monumental, it's been 7 years actually, since Uranus was in Taurus. When I started Talk Cosmos, it was just at this point, 29 degrees Aries. Just leaving. It was amazing. So here we are again.
So are you starting something new now that
I'm fine? Yes, I am. I'm like, if I could just springboard. It's hard to be patient. I mean, it's hard to really. Well, and for good reason. There's a lot of fire going on. If you have fire, it's like, well, can't we just burn a little and get going?
So So this is a big moment of shifting. I mean, we did have an ingress of Uranus into Gemini last year, but then it went back, and so now it stays in Gemini for the next 7 years, and so that's what innovation and ingenuity and sudden change in how we communicate at a very local level, how we understand community and neighborhoods.
And I think that's part of this, is that with Pluto, immediately, one reason I brought this up is that here, folks, we have a limited horoscope. I did not include everything. And we have Haumea up there, that little cute picture up at the top in Scorpio. Mm-hmm. That is, but the three of them, well, it is Uranus at 0 degrees, but meanwhile, Neptune, Pluto, and Haumea are all in aspect, and they continue this theme going on and on. Neptune might be in a mini grand square, mini grand trine, rather. It's different mobilities of function, but the energies are there. It's kind of like having the ocean out front. Sometimes it tides in, sometimes it tides out, sometimes, many factors.
And do you ascribe to that view of the higher octaves?
I do. I rather like it. I like association. Yeah,
I think it's a good way. So just introducing that for anyone who doesn't know, that we consider Haumea to be a higher octave of Neptune, which in this chart that you have up is an inconjunct, the green line.
Oh, thank you.
Between them at the moment. And then Neptune, so building on this higher octave.
Trying to raise it up. It's like,
way of thinking.
How do you do that? Yeah.
So Venus, Neptune is considered the higher octave of Venus, right? Venus is our relationships, our values, and then Neptune is a spiritualized level of that.
And I might add quickly, I really struggled, but I did not add Venus in here because Venus is only 2 degrees from Uranus when it ingresses, which is as of April 26th. And that's rather, so interestingly, we have these, it's like past and present, but it's consciousness evolution. And again, it's so easy to talk about these as though we're watching a Netflix show. Experiencing the different acts is another process.
Yeah, I definitely want to underline that there's, and maybe this is the physicalization that we're talking about here of, heaven and earth. So the intellectual, the spiritual, the like ethereal, and then the embodiment, right?
Yes, so that's right.
Uranus and Gemini, we can begin to innovate how we understand and think and communicate. And at the same time, Haumea's going like in Scorpio, deep, dark, and vital transformation and rebirth. I
think I packed a lot into this first half hour. These are the three. This is Pluto with its dog Cerberus, that the 3-headed one that guards the people, the souls, to stay in the underworld. And that's Neptune with his trident of the sea, or Poseidon.
His sea turtle.
Oh, yes, exactly. Oh, I love that, the sea turtle. It's so Hawaiian here. It's like Earth, originally Earth in many ways. And of course, Pluto's also called Hades, but then the underworld was called Hades. I think we have to break pretty quick. And there's Haumea of creation with the volcano in the back. So we'll come back to this and we'll just briefly go over it, but it shows here this dynamic. We'll just take a break. Okay, we'll be back. See everybody. I have Melissa Elvira Billington with me, and we are talking about another big cycle that is many fractions or phases of regeneration. Here we go. Thanks. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We're currently in the period of Taurus.
By leaving a cycle based upon initiation, the energy of Taurus integrates spirit into a solid form of matter that is tangible and physical. It's an earth sign, concerned with self-sufficiency and the values to maintain the strength of a life form throughout its survival.
Talk Cosmos ignites insightful conversations to awaken heart and soul consciousness with hour-long programs every Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific on KKNW. Also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click their like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. You can listen to earlier podcasts since 2018, either on most podcast carriers or under the video tab on Talk Cosmos YouTube. To join our expedition and find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com and launch your week into the cosmic wonder.
This is Martha Norwalk, every Sunday morning beginning at 9 a.m. Thanks in part to Linda Rasmussen at verticalenergyworldwide.com, we cover the world of animals. This week, May 3rd, at Shelter Rescue Sanctuary and anything that helps our Animal Friends Sunday. We'll check in with Now.Cat Rescue, Help Animals India, and Animals24-7.org. Plus, we'll find out about all the upcoming events and classes at the Ananda Institute for Living Yoga. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Going our own way every day. Alternative Talk 1150.
Okay, we are back and we'll scoot through some of this. I brought this up because there's no way we're going to bring up all these charts, but it immediately shows that beginning with the retrograde, because that's a moment where we know we are we're looking at everything back again, right? The heads are going forwards, backwards, it's review, etc. But look at those yads, and that is adjustment. There's no way to.
Would you look at those yads? What a yad on them.
I like it. Hey, we ought to have a t-shirt. Yad, yo. Anyway, add the D on the end. Because here we have Haumea as one of the focal points. And we have the South Node as a focal point, but that continues on and on and on. It's like we're adjusting, just like we had indicated, these one level of consciousness. And I don't know who right now is the great sage who said, some author, that you can, it's tough to raise everybody to the same level of understanding. I'm sure the priests, anyway, but that's the goal. At least give everybody dignity, right?
Yeah. Human rights. I find it interesting. A lot of times Aquarius is connected to humanity, humanitarian, human rights, even though it is that communication that goes beyond the human. And sometimes I find other species are actually far better at being human or humane than we are.
Yeah, very true. I like that. This is when it ends, just to give the context. As you can see, it still has that square, the red line, folks. And in this one, actually, it has what I will introduce, and it has a yod, and it's all so Uranus in its transformation is adjusting to the spirituality, you could say, of between Uranus and Neptune, we could go into huge areas about, but the whole thing is packed. And there's also, I don't mean to skip over, and I really do try to talk in lay terms, but I just used a lot of shortcuts there. So I apologize, because we could say that we're talking about innovative technology to community and networking and just neighborhoods, all of this combined. And with Neptune, we're talking, oh my goodness, I don't know if we're even beginning to understand what Neptune in Aries really is, because it's going to be on for 13 years. This is a long saga. It's nothing small.
Yeah. And I just wanted to briefly say the glyphs, the symbols. So you have Haumea down there, bottom left, the circle, and then it almost looks Asian, right? There's the platform and then another circle underneath. And that circle is, right, wholeness is a sense of unity. And I feel like it shows the birthing. There's this other whole
the womb
being
almost, or under the
housed,
horizon.
held. Yeah. Whereas Pluto over there on the right has that circle, and it's upward facing, right?
With the crescent of soul. I think it's spirit of the circle, soul, because Gemini Brett goes into these enormously. And coming from Seattle, there's several astrologers, Gemini Brett, Rick Levine. Not that they were together by any means, but I frequent it so much and just indelibly put things in my head. But he's very big on that. So on the cross of matter. So it is amazing how the same glyphs, like even Uranus, all of them have this association between soul, spirit, and the cross of matter in different thoughts. But I hadn't thought of Haumea. That's the rebirth. I love this idea of it.
Well, so spirit, you're saying, is the crescent, right? And so
Yes.
she has two crescents going
on
to
the
sides.
sides.
So the spirit is going out sideways, similar to Uranus in a way, right?
Well, here I'm a little off-centered. Yeah, but here we have Melissa, just to recap, and this is the Trust the Longer Journey with a QR code. It has a fabulous, very prolific, well-subscribed Substack. So do look into that. That's Melissa Elvira Billington. And then this is, again, I think a QR code for it, yes? Or this is for Instagram?
That's for Instagram, yeah.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. And Talk Cosmos, I have weekly. Next week will be about Mars and Chiron. And of course, there are ones about Uranus and Gemini with Mark Jones, or coming up with Linda Berry and Rob Passetti. They're going to look at vibrationally Uranus and Sedna together, that'll be a mystery.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so here we go. I put this particular graphic because I learned this from Rick Levine. When you get an inconjunct, when two planets are at odds because they don't have any immediate way to meet, and it's sort of a juggle, push and pull, we've said an adjustment. And then one is a focal planet to those two planets. It's square to one and it's trine to the other. So it's a flow and it's activation. So it's motivated in both ways to mitigate with this could be awkward, or this growth adjustment. And it's a learning process. That's actually what they call it, a learning triangle. And it is just all over the place continually with this square, and often with Neptune. So that's where I put this into AI. And it came up.
Oh, nice. Thanks, AI. There's Uranus and Gemini for you, Pluto in Aquarius as well. Like the team, the synergy, as it shows there in that image, using AI for spirit soul purposes.
That's true.
And for good.
So this shows one graphic that I've had. So if people wonder what it is, because it explains what square, degrees, and trines. So you can look at that. And there's a focal planet, as you can see, that has these two aspects to it. So here we go, just starting closer now between that Pluto retrograde and the Pluto Haumea square goes easily through 2029. I went laboriously last night through every week and month through the whole 7 years.
So the focal planet in this learning triangle is it the
Uranus is one. See where the green down there in the third house is?
Yeah.
This is all coming from London, UK. But it has, wherever you see the green, you can look at there. So you have a green, and it's going from Haumea to Uranus, and Uranus then is trine Pluto. So actually, no, this time for that one, it happens to be Pluto, which is the focal point, to Haumea in conjunct or quincunx Uranus. However,
I see.
yeah, but it is a little bit, you have to,
I was looking at the darker one between the North Node, Haumea, and Uranus. There's another learning triangle there, isn't there? There's a couple of
Yes, there is. There is another one. It's.
which makes
no,
the
wait a
North
minute. Yeah,
Node.
there's two of them. In fact, North Node and yes, indeed. The key is to look at that in conjunct and then see if you can see another planet that's both square and trine to it. So meaning transformation, we are in that process, regenerating, shifting our powers, resources. And I hope with people, individuals, community, how we connect with each other. It's a whole discovery process. And some of these.
But nothing can be in isolation.
No.
I think that's Pluto in Aquarius. I mean, the gift of Aquarius of that wider mind.
And this just shows how, again and again, Neptune is involved. It is in that it's connecting to the trine. It's another remarkable cycle to have since the 60s, 64, 66, where Pluto and Uranus were conjunct, and they were at a square 2012 to 15. And again, I used to go listen to Jeff Jower and Rick Levine, and they talked about this. They said, well, we've talked about it a lot. Well, yes, but that's good. We learned. But now they're in a trine, and people are,
I think that's a really good point. Sorry to interrupt you, Sue.
No.
In terms of repetition, we're talking about this square between Pluto and Haumea, and I think I had come across a little research with Sue Kintz saying that one of the first two squares between them coincided precisely with the rulings around Roe versus Wade. So we're talking about reproduction, right? Haumea, fertility, reproduction. Pluto, power, the relationship between them, who has the power to decide one's own reproductive rights. But what I'm bringing that up to say that like this square between Pluto and Haumea is over years. And so the repetition is necessary. I know when I first started teaching yoga, I kept trying to reinvent the way that I would say things because I thought I was insulting my students by saying the same thing over and over.
Oh, right.
Until I realized that the only way to learn anything is repetition that's precise. You can't keep changing the command or changing the understanding, right?
Yeah.
So I think that repetition is key for us in these bigger, as you said, evolutionary consciousness. Consciousness of evolution.
We do. That is a very early learning tool as a child. It's true. Or any time we're learning a new habit, it is important. That's so true.
And we are basically children of the universe, aren't we?
Yes. So glad. Well, bringing up the themes, I thought this was the goal. One of my rebirth goals is to go back to the content the method that I used in the very beginning as a podcast, and that was a conversation. So we have this laid out. The food is so important. As climate and thinking of the rebirth of all of it, I happen to notice, just to set us off in some direction, because Uranus is awakening, and there's in our state of Hawaii, the wide world fun for the animals. I belong to things for the animals. The wild animals. Yes. And there turned to be two for this United States, which you're not you're not living here, although you are still a citizen, of course. Mm-hmm. And just to bring out as an example that there's a bipartisan, two bills that are trying to relabel legally through to bring greater awareness and identity to food exploration, and then further how to use food so that it's not wasted, because it said that 30% of food ends up in the trash. 133 billion pounds of wasted food valued at, these numbers are like staggering, 161 billion, and it depletes the water, the soil, because all of that supports it, and it's being misappropriated. So
that was one of the assignments, one of the research projects that I was involved in was looking at food waste and potential remedies for it. But a big part of that problem, as you're just saying, is how to understand the extent of it. And so being here in Australia, the Sydney Opera House is often used as, a measure. So we had a visual in our report of the amount of food wastage being twice as big as the Sydney, and you could see the visual, right? The Sydney Harbour, beautiful opera house, and then this mountain of waste every year. And so that is a bit of a campaign these days. And it's a very good point in terms of Haumea and in terms of transforming our relationship with food.
It is so true. And how food is grown. I think that's another really wonderful possibility, because water is limited. I know that during the droughts, it's brought up, at least when I was in the States, in the mainland, as they call it here in Hawaii, where it was brought up that countries like Israel have a superior method of water systems, drip systems that really conserve. And I've always been a proponent. I went back to school at 40 and a big proponent on water cycling in houses. Like, why don't we have, there's gray water, as they call it. So but this focus will undoubtedly, and the other thing is, just to throw out for your inspiration, is that how to work is, how to support oneself is increasingly changing. And if people could create farms that were even solar light energy and water systems like hydroponics,
gray water.
Yes, right. Then that would allow so much.
Well, and so when you're talking about water being limited, so much of it is polluted, and so much of that pollution does come from agriculture. So one of the the first experience I had with artivism came from going down the Hudson River in New York on a solar boat and bringing attention to the communities along the river, some of the issues that the river faced, but from an artistic perspective. So that's art and activism together, right? And so the awareness of how, and a lot of my other activities in that realm have had to do with water. So a phrase that came from that journey, though, was "we all live downstream." That was sort of the banner on the boat, was "we all live downstream." There's been a lot of siloed thinking in humans, and that can no longer be possible because of technological expansion. We are in real time with things happening all over the globe and even beyond as we send people into outer space.
Yes. May I interject here?
Yes, you may.
When the astronauts went to the moon, and my husband says they didn't go to the moon because he remembers, in 1967 it was, 68, 67 when they did go to the moon. And I do too, but they went around the moon, which, see in the back side of it, which, okay, I'm going to interrupt myself. But, maybe shall I or shall I not? I don't want to forget what I was going to say. Okay, I'll say it first. That was that one of the commentators here in the news was saying that, interestingly, one experience from all the astronauts ever, because they'd covered many, many astronauts throughout the years, is that the mission was supposed to be about outer space, but when they came back, it was all about Earth. And I thought, it just warmed my heart. I loved it.
And that's what I was talking about, is that perspective, right? Is that we can no longer be siloed. So we can no longer imagine that we live upstream and what we do does not impact anybody else. We have all of the data and we have all of the technology to be able to monitor in real time how much pollutants impact and where they're coming from.
The moon might be our stepping stone in this case, figuratively speaking. Because of that, it's often in astrology recognized that when we discover, according to our awareness, I think that needs to be added always, because we didn't find it. We just found it. Yeah, it's always there. But here we've actually seen the back of the moon, which it had not been viewed. So there's something secretive. And it's not just secretive, it's private. Cancer, thinking of the moon representing just immediately on that personal, astrology basis, is absolutely personal. I happen to have a heap of family members, my grandmother, my mother, a sister, my husband, they're all cancers. And people I know with different parts, attached to their horoscope. And you think you know them, but there's some part of them that's just very private. Like any of us, where our moon is something about it is our rock, our way of. So in other words, to see this back viewpoint might just liberate, in a sense, some commonality. I would, because we're in a sharing mode. I think of New York mode of mind or something.
New York frame of mind.
Yeah, frame of mind. Yeah, that's right.
Frame of heart. Yes. Well, yes, and I think that also, just this week we have the full moon in Scorpio, so that's also a very, private.
The 27th.
But also, it's the composting, right? The Scorpio, the Pluto. It's all of that dissolution, which may come out of our disillusionment, needing to dissolve.
Transmute, yes. Or compost. I like those words, because transform.
And it's not. It happens in the dark, and that's the word you were talking earlier about Pluto and the riches, and particularly I think in Aquarius, we're looking at the rare elements that are needed for technology, for electrical, e-energy, or e-vehicles, wind farms, like all of that is requiring this Plutonian wealth. Such a great word, chthonic.
It does focus on consciousness, ultimately. I think of that again and again in everything, whether it's soul consciousness, to me is one of the roots that I hold on to, the meaningfulness. That's huge to talk about. But the point being, scoot back here, Sue. Get in the brain here.
I can just jump back in with the, for me, again, in the environmental studies, one of the last reports that I did was looking at and analyzing an environmental impact assessment of a wind farm. And so here's an example in my mind of Pluto and Aquarius, an air sign.
Oh, yeah.
But the one that is taking us into, the widest level of communication. And wind farms, the impact, there's so many impacts, this idea of like, I can live upstream and not impact. I can be siloed and not impact. I can do whatever damage, pollute whatever way I want without impact. It's similar on a sound level, on a vibrational level.
Oh, right? Like the animals in the ocean with the sonic booms. Yeah, it destroys their hearing and everything. Exactly. And I've always dreamed, I've had these ideas. I thought, if you can imagine it, there's somebody that has the knowledge, and now maybe AI does, if they can program it or feed it enough, that it's possible. And there's a couple of ideas for energy. One of them is, which has been talked about, like the tides, the movement, although you have to, like talking about what you're saying is you have to be careful of the fish and all the other things in it. However, there's also temperature. Every night and day, the temperature rises anywhere from 20 to 30 to more degrees. And you would think just that change, if we could somehow capture it,
right,
give us energy everywhere.
Right. And I would say it's also important to question the uses of our energy, our current energy uses, our current relationship to what we call resources. Who are they resources for? So again, this is the complexity, the fractalization of our relationship, of recognizing, again, it's not one way. Things impact me. We impact other
It's
things.
multiple. I thank you. Yes, just Aquarius itself is the network, the community, the larger groups. They can be small, they can be large, but that's where we can begin to work with. So to find our spot and just operate, start and begin and start again. It's a
And I guess
onward.
I would say trust the longer journey, right? That's the phrase that I work with. So I think in this slow birth that we're looking at, these squares, these aspects, we have to be in it for the long haul.
Thank you, Melissa Elvira Billington. I look forward to the next time you're on. And for everybody, may our rebirth give us a few glad times.
Thank you for joining this vibrant and insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her guests awaken consciousness by connecting heart and soul consciousness patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.